gigantic metal beasts were wind turbines, grand pieces of equipment used to harness one of our natural resources. As I remember the grandiose appearance, I am inspired to open a roadside rollade stand for intestinally sensitive travelers like myself. It left me with a sickening sensation in the pit of my stomach as I watched the circular motion of those huge outstretched arms as I wound my way down this long stretch of 28, strewn with cows, horses, and wind turbines. I can't help but remember the first time I traveled this route in the opposite direction. My Ford Tempo packed to the rafters with my childhood possessions and junk, and my future wife in the passenger seat as we headed off into our new life together in New Jersey. As I was getting closer to Orchard Park, I started to get excited about being near my old stomping ground. The traffic and construction as I traveled through the town of East Aurora did not disappoint. My truck shimmying and shaking with every bump, pothole, and orange-coned lane redirection. I worked my way through the small but dangerous circle in town with only a few uncomfortable eye contact moments with other drivers, not knowing if they were going or yielding. I believe I may have even called out to Jesus Christ as I watched the brake lights of an elderly lady pumping her brakes ahead of me. I cannot say for sure it was an elderly lady, as I only saw the top of her head from behind, but I swear I did hear her yell out the window, "Where's the beef?" The only thing keeping me from being in my old hometown of Orchard Park now was a few stop-and-start streetlights. Whenever I come home, I can't help but drive through the town's local hardware store's parking lot. My brother David has been working there for over 30 years, and I can usually find him milling around his work area, and this trip was no different. I parked and walked back to where Dave was and called out, "Hey, what's up?" "Hey, how you doing?" he replied. Then he realized it was me coming to visit, and he seemed genuinely glad to see me. I wanted to get back to Orchard Park in time to go with my dad to his Saturday night church service that is held at St. John's Lutheran Church. St. John's was the church where I worshiped as a child and attended kindergarten through second grade there as well. My fondest memory of my kindergarten career was the year I peaked at my athletic prowess, winning the ever-esteemed blue ribbon, representing my third-place finish in the 50-yard dash. There were 4 participants in that race. I wonder if the kid who came in 4th ever got that cast removed. It must have really hindered him in that race that day. My mind was constantly filled with memories from the past that weekend. My brother informed me that the church service started at 5 p.m. and it was already 4:40 on my BlackBerry, so I told Dave I would talk to him soon, as I wanted to get to the church quickly to see if Dad was there. Arriving at St. John's, I spied my dad sitting in the back row with my Aunt Grace, who was in her 70s. This was an unannounced visit, so I did not want to give anyone a heart attack. I entered the sanctuary as the minister was giving his sermon. He knew who I am, remembering me from attending my mother's memorial service he so beautifully presided over. I tapped my aunt on the shoulder and we made eye contact. She smiled and then proceeded to give my dad an elbow in the side, reminiscent to the time my wife gave me an elbow in my side after accidentally passing gas in church. My father became quite excited when he realized I was in town and came to join him at the church we attended many years ago during my childhood. I did not want to disrupt the church service any more than I already had, as all eyes were on us, including the pastor's. It wasn't helping that my dad was doing his best Helen Keller impersonation, pointing to a space next to him in which only an anorexic elf would be comfortable sitting, so I promptly sat a row or 2 up from him, and I made eye contact with the pastor, and we smiled. This man had a kind soul, again remembering how warm and caring he was to our family after my mom had passed. The pastor's sermon was titled, "How is your relationship with God?" It was an interesting subject to have walked into. I have been in a relationship with Christ for many years, but it has only been recently that I have made a vested effort in growing and strengthening my relationship with Jesus Christ. As with any relationship, it takes commitment, patience, and faith, and the fact that both parties love each other. I wonder, as you listen to this CD, do you have a relationship with Christ? No need to go to Match.com for this one. He has already chosen you, and already loves you, and he is just waiting for you to accept his invitation. When the pastor asked the congregation to shake hands and say hello to the people around you, I took the chance to speak with my dad and let him know that I came to visit and spend the night. He was extremely happy, and he quickly went into his campaign manager role, introducing me to everyone. "This is my son Darryl. He came up to see me. This is my son Darryl. He came up to see me." I didn't know he was coming. I think I shook as many hands as Barack Obama did at his inauguration. Well, not even close, but it sounded good. It is amazing how something so small as a son coming to see his dad can bring so much happiness. The ability to make someone so happy without bringing gifts, showering them with compliments, is a blessing to the receiver and to the giver. Is there a loved one or a family member in your life that can be blessed by a phone call or an email or a visit from you? Do not underestimate the power you have to bring happiness to someone's life simply by showing kindness and caring. I took what would be the first of 3 communions that weekend. Partaking of communion with my father is something special and sacred. The sharing of the Lord's body and blood is something I haven't done with my father in over 30 years, and it was a blessing to do so on this very special and blessed weekend. As we left the church, the pastor was at the door and said, "Peace be with you," similar to a receiving line at a wedding. When it was my turn to greet the pastor, he gave me one of them MTV Cribs "What's Up Dog" handshakes and half-man hug bumps, whispering in my ear, "It is good to see you. You are making your dad very happy right now." And of course, in classic dad fashion, he asked the pastor, "Do you know my son Darryl?" Which I interjected, "Yes, Dad, I met him at Mom's memorial service." And Dad replied, "He came up to see me. I wasn't expecting him." "Wonderful," the pastor responded with a warm smile, a kindly nod, and a twinkle in his eye. After the service, Dad, Aunt Grace, and I decided to go out to a favorite eating establishment of my dad's. It is also connected to the bar, which was my old stomping ground as a younger man. We were joined by my brother David. It was a nice gesture for him to come and was greatly appreciated by Dad and myself. I mentioned earlier in the story that I do not have a very big family. I have been feeling a sense of emptiness for many years, wishing to one day reconnect with the family members from my youth. It is funny how life works. As my story progresses, you will see how God can work miracles in your life on His schedule, not yours. Having dinner with my father, my aunt, and my brother was a wonderful experience, and one that I do not foresee happening often in the future. When it comes to ordering food, the men in this group had a pretty firm grasp on what their stomachs desired. But when it came to my aunt, God bless her, she will be the first one to admit to being a fussy fart. I have, for whatever reason, been able to joke around with my aunt for years, and that day was no exception. We all agreed on the fact that we were hungry prior to arriving at the restaurant, but when it came time to order, my aunt proclaimed she wasn't hungry and would just have water. I razzed her about being a cheap date and being a pain in the butt when it comes to eating. She finally agreed to order rice pudding. When the waitress brought our food, we chuckled at the facial expressions of my aunt as she evaluated the dish of rice pudding, knowing well ahead of time she would complain. She took one bite and then pushed the perfectly delicious dish of rice pudding toward my brother David, who, like a human garbage disposal, will devour any leftover from our plates that is offered to him. After all, he was raised in a household where wasting food in a world in which children were starving was not acceptable, and to this day on my father's refrigerator door are the pictures of children my mother and father have sponsored throughout the years with the World Vision Group, an international organization that feeds children all over the world. I remember hugging my aunt goodbye that day and her telling me to stop down and see her sometime and we would go out to lunch. I jokingly said, "Great, we can go somewhere else where you won't eat and be a pain in the butt." She smiled, poked me in the arm, and gives me another big hug before we parted company. My father is a kind man. I love and respect him very much, but I will have to say that when I come home to visit, I sometimes feel he forgot that I lived there for over 25 years. In his over-enthusiastic, hospitable way, I would be reminded where the extra blankets were, where the glasses were if I wanted a drink, and of my refrigerator privileges. I reminded him that I did not get to this size by being bashful when it comes to helping myself. After all but drawing me a map to disclose the location of the extra blanket, he would proceed to tell me that if I should get cold during the night, I could add a blanket, and if I get warm, I could remove a blanket. Thanks, Dad. I don't know what I would do without you. Although I just made a sarcastic statement, it does deserve a minute or two of discussion. It has only been since my mother passing away and the renewal of my relationship with Jesus Christ that I have often thought how much our parents do for us. I was blessed to have two parents who loved me and my brothers very much. We may not have had everything we wanted all the time, but always had everything we needed. My father worked long hours, and my mother was a wonderful woman who always made time for her boys. As I am writing the story of my blessed weekend, it is nearing Father's Day. I hope as you listen to me ramble on, you will take a moment to think of your parents or that special someone that helped raise you, and appreciate the sacrifices, effort, and love that has been shown to you. If you are a young person enjoying this story, it would be a wonderful act of kindness to let your parental figures know how much you appreciate them. Blessings come in all sizes, and a kind word is often a bigger blessing than most of us realize. It's something that all of us should share more often. If you have lost that special person or people in your life, taking a moment to reflect in prayer, thanking the Lord for them, is a wonderful way to grow in your